Well, hello everyone. I wanted to put together another chapter, another video to talk about this next level of material on consumer decision making. Hopefully you saw the first video on stage one and stage two. Stage one deals with the element of uh, deciding if there is a problem, real or perceived, and the second one is considering the information, gathering the information, and all that. Excuse me. This stage three is a rather complex one. Talks about evaluating your choices. Okay, so that's what I really want to get into here. Know this: that basically consumers tend to turn around and consider a great number of things when it comes to making a choice. All right. Um, I say they different number of choices and they put in a different amount of effort. So we start to talk about what products do we consider? What comes to mind? For the most part, we also consider, first of all, when we start to think about things, we think about things we already know about. These are products that come from our memories, okay? This includes what we presently use as well as things that we have heard about in the past, been told about, seen, and so on. So there are products that we know about and come from our memory, and then there are products that we see when we enter the store. All right. These different products turn around and can be brand new to us, but we go to the store, we go to Amazon.com, and then we become aware of it. So these are the products we consider, those that we know from the past and those that we turn around and see. Now, there are some terms here I want you to know. We speak of what is called an evoked set. An evoked set are products that we will consider purchasing. They may be products that are from the first category we know from memory. Those are evoked set. You can have items that we see when we walk in the store, and those too can be an evoked set. All right. There are also products we just will not consider. All right. And for whatever reason, we know that we don't want this or we don't want that. We're not going to give it much consideration. And then the interesting one is there are those products that we come across that we just simply don't know about. And we may learn about them soon, and they'll go from what we would call an inert set to an evoked set. We don't know about them. A lot of companies work very hard to make us aware of products that are part of our inert set that we don't know about. Okay? So when it comes to choosing among our alternatives, we consider the things that we know about. Um, there are some rules that come into play for choosing. All right. These are some mental rules that we tend to apply in these cases. We speak of what is called evaluative criteria. Evaluative criteria is one of these rules. What matters to us? Okay. When choosing among products, what matters to us? That's what evaluative criteria is all about. Um, we could talk about functionality, how that may be a criteria that's very important to us, how well something works or how practical something is, uh, can also influence our decision. Another criteria we may use is how it makes us feel, how a product creates a positive experience or how it influences our emotions. Okay, these are important as well. Now, know this: since different criteria hold different levels of importance to us, companies have to work to figure out which of these criteria mean what to us. And depending upon our age, depending upon our background, that can influence what matters most. Sometimes you get certain consumers, they're all about the feeling, whereas other consumers are all about the function. All right. This is a process known as determinant attributes. Okay. Um, Determinant attributes is what companies do. And as I just said, since different criteria matter to different consumers, companies have to work to identify and emphasize those attributes that are most important. This is where they do their marketing. This is where they turn around and they gather their information to find out what matters most to you as a target market. Okay, so that's what a lot of them do. Now, ultimately, how do companies use products to influence consumers? Companies a lot of times will try to educate a consumer further and show them what attributes to focus on. So if I'm a company and I'm trying to figure out what my consumers like, are they about the form? Are they about the function? Are they about the feeling? Okay, the emotions and stuff like that. What I may do is educate them and show them what matters, show them what they should focus on. This product is very durable, or that product, everyone is going to like it if you wear that product. This is what you try to impress upon people. If that doesn't work, a new thing that a lot of companies do now is they actually invent attributes. They actually invent attributes. They come up with attributes that, all things considered, you may not have considered. And guess what? Their product solves that attribute. So I remember from long ago when Budweiser, Anheuser-Busch came up with the idea of the born on date. How old is your beer? You would find on a lot of bottles and still today when it was made. And they would say it's best if you consume it, if you drink it within 30 to 60 days. So people actually, they latched onto this concept of this attribute of a born on date. They created it. Anheuser-Busch created it, and people liked it, and so it really solved a problem. Now, when it comes to choosing among alternatives, there are some mental rules that come into play, and I'll explain this picture here in just a moment. Okay? One of the mental rules that we sometimes apply is what is called a non-compensatory decision rule. When it comes to making a purchase, non-compensatory rules simply mean that if anything comes along that a product is very low on or ranks poorly, nothing you do is going to make up for it. Okay, non-compensatory. If you rank low on one thing, it doesn't matter what the rest of the things are, we're not going to consider that product. The example here of the 10, I found this 10 least reliable vehicles. If you found a vehicle that was very unreliable, it doesn't matter if it's a great price. It doesn't matter with all the other things. With the non-compensatory rules, once it hits that and there's something that matters to you and they rate very low on it, it's out. You don't consider it. Okay. I'd say the same thing about a computer. That was brought up once. If a computer rates real low in terms of quality, well, it doesn't matter the price. You may not buy it. All right. Non-compensatory rules. Basically, there are different types of non-compensatory rules. The idea that if one thing cannot make up for another. For example, there is what is called the lexicon or the lexicographic rule. The lexicographic rule basically says that consumers choose certain brands because they rank real high on very important attributes. Okay. Um, if something matters to you a lot, for example, you want to buy products that are made in the USA. If a company sells you things that are made in the USA, and that is a very important attribute to you, you know, that one thing may be enough to lead you in that direction. All the rest of the things don't matter. Okay, if it has a long warranty to it, that may convince you that something is worth buying because it's a new vehicle is guaranteed, has a warranty bumper to bumper for 3 years or 5 years, and people say, well, that's all I need to know, and they'll turn around and buy that. The lexicon, if there's something that matters a great deal and a company has it, we go with it. All right. The elimination by aspects approach, this mindset to purchasing things, basically says that consumers will turn their back on products if they don't have an important attribute. It's automatically disregarded. Okay, if a product has to have a certain feature or a certain function to it, and it doesn't have that, well, then we're not going to consider it. That's all there is to it. If it doesn't offer a certain element to a piece of technology, then basically you're not going to mess with it. Someone told me once, as an example, they were looking at laptops and they actually needed a laptop that still had the capacity for handling CDs or DVDs. And any computer that didn't have that, they weren't going to consider because they traveled a lot and actually had a whole battery of DVD movies that they would watch on planes and stuff like that when they were flying. So that's an elimination by aspects. You just any computer or laptop that doesn't have that, they weren't interested. And so you sit there and mention some of the other products and Netflix and that, they didn't care. It had to have that. Another example, if you want to buy a ceiling fan, okay, and some ceiling fans actually have a remote control that comes with it. You can either leave it next to your bed or you can connect it to the wall and stuff like that. I had someone once tell me, well, I won't consider a ceiling fan if it doesn't have a remote control. That's just not going to happen. All right. So you have the lexicon rule, you have the elimination by aspects rule. These are mental mindsets, and you have what is called a conjunctive rule. The conjunctive rule is really similar to elimination by aspects, except that we choose things based not on product attributes, but we choose things based on brand. Okay, based on brand. It's got to be a Sony. It's got to be a Dell computer. It's got to be Ford. It's got to be Chevy. It's got to be Toyota. That's sort of the conjunctive rule. If they're not a particular brand, we're not going to consider it. Okay, that's how a lot of that works. These are mindsets, and they really do come into play in how all this works out. I use an old example that my parents would have when it came to televisions and technology. Magnavox was a very big one for them. So in memory of my folks, I put that one up there right there. So they wouldn't buy it. One final word on non-compensatory rules, where one thing cannot offset. If you apply a non-compensatory rule, okay, and there's nothing left to choose from, you have considered all your options and you've eliminated everything. You have a couple of things that most consumers will do. One thing that they'll do is they'll turn around and they'll modify their original standards. Okay, maybe they will buy something that is outside of the normal brand name. They maybe will buy something that you know, has an attribute that at first wasn't as important, but you can convince yourself it is. All right, you modify your standards, or if nothing else, you just don't buy, and that happens a lot. People decide they won't buy. All right, and they'll put off the purchase. So these are all examples of what are called non-compensatory rules. The other thing that sometimes we use as far as when we're considering our alternatives is what is called a compensatory rule. With the compensatory rule, I mean, basically this suggests that if a product's attributes fall short in some categories, they can make up for it somewhere else, okay? They can make up for it elsewhere. That is possible. Consumers who often apply these rules, tend to be more involved in the purchase and are willing to consider the whole picture. You know, um, Basically, with a compensatory, you add up, how many nice things you have versus others, and that's how you make the decision. In fact, there are different types of compensatory rules. There is what is referred to as simple compensation. A simple compensatory rule or simple compensation simply means that when deciding on products, you're going to see who has the most uh, positive product attributes. If one product turns around and has two things going for it, and another product comes along and has four things going for it, you just go with whoever has the most, and that is the one you choose. All right. Um, and there's no more complexity to it than that. Well, this thing has two things. Well, this one has four things. Why don't we get the other one? We see a lot of simple compensation techniques used by low involvement consumers. Okay. When it comes to making a decision, low involvement consumers, this one has two, this one has three or four or five, we go with the other. And it's that simple. Okay. A lot of companies then will, what do? They list as many positive attributes as possible. That's what a company will do. They'll put as most stuff out there as they can, because the problem is that the importance of each attribute is not considered. You just list as many as possible, and if the low involvement consumer is just going to take the number and that's it, so be it. You never consider how important an attribute is. All right? It's just whoever has the most. Simple compensation. The last one I want to mention here is what is called complex compensation. And complex compensation simply means that not only will you consider each attribute in terms of importance, but you will also weigh its importance. So while one product may only have, say, two attributes, and another product may have four or five, if those two attributes are really important to the consumer, they'll go with the first choice. Even though it has fewer, they're weighting them. They're high quality and a good price. Whereas the other product may turn around and have lots of other things, uh, but maybe they don't have high quality and good price, but that's what matters the most. Okay, so you sort of weight them out. All right, folks, that's enough for now. I hope all that makes sense. I hope it all helps. Take care.